Government believes in nation-building projects, which can, in both clean and conventional energy. Those projects have several characteristics: material economic benefits, linking together different parts of our economy, consistency with our climate objectives, and benefits and participation for Indigenous peoples. So those elements coming together can come together in a pipeline to the West Coast. It depends on the specific proposal.
Are you at all considering repealing either the tanker ban or the emissions cap, yes or no?
It depends. What this government is interested in is in results.
It depends. That's the message from Prime Minister Mark Carney when he was asked if he's considering repealing either the tanker ban on BC's coast or the emissions cap to pave the way for a new bitumen pipeline from Alberta to BC's northwestern coast. Now, both were signature environmental planks of the last Liberal government, and they're two of the few remaining policies that seriously address climate change. But contrast that to the openness from what his Minister of Energy and Natural Resources said before a Senate committee yesterday.
What we have said is to build, you need support of the jurisdiction you build through, and you need the support of First Nations. The proponent, in this case, the province of Alberta, needs to get to attract that if they want to build. That's something between the province of Alberta and the province of British Columbia. We've said we will be a constructive participant in that three-way discussion. The province of Alberta has some work to do.
So where does that leave things as we close in on Danielle Smith's deadline to see it on the next list of major projects? Let's bring in our front bench. Muhammad Ali is a former Liberal staffer. He's now Vice President at Crestview Strategy. Rachel Aiello is CTV's national correspondent. We also have Gary Keller. He's Vice President at Strategy Corp. He held a number of key roles in the Conservative government of Stephen Harper. We also have former interim NDP National Director Carl Belanger. He's now the president of Traction Strategies. Happy Friday. Welcome to everyone. Rachel, I'm going to start with you because Carney's answer there, as we heard your voice, was in response to the question on whether or not he believes a tanker ban would be, or whether or not a pipeline could go to the West Coast. And what's your assessment of him saying that it depends, and specifically on repealing some of those environmental things?
Yeah, usually, Mike, when a politician gives you an answer that starts with "it depends," you think it's probably not going to go anywhere fruitful. That was not the case this time. I think the Prime Minister's answer here was extremely illuminating in saying that he is not ruling out that this could happen. And as you go through his answer, I think the reading between the lines here, if I'm interpreting what the Prime Minister is saying correctly, is that he is saying that they're going to be bringing forward some major projects that, like carbon capture, that will essentially offset some other projects they might approve in the traditional oil and gas sector. So my read was essentially he is saying that he thinks he's going to be able to get away with getting rid of things like the emission cap if he puts in the window carbon capture, other green technology, green energy projects. So that'll be really fascinating to watch. And the political communications level of that is, are those two things going to happen simultaneously? Like, hey guys, tanker ban's going away, but oh, look, shiny other thing. Like, how are they going to balance out the very good number of votes the Liberals have on the West Coast in British Columbia with this push the Prime Minister has to boost up our energy sector? Yeah,
and especially, Mohammed, when you consider they don't really have a lot of votes in Alberta that they have to sort and ridings that they have to please at this point. But at the same time, he's sort of trying to have it all right now, the Prime Minister.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting that I think part of the depends comment is, we heard that Keystone Pipeline was raised with the U.S. president. That's a project that does not need to go through BC, and it allows them to focus on just an Alberta specific, relieves the pressure, because the Prime Minister is also cognizant of these separatists animosity in Alberta. So he doesn't want to fuel more Western alienation. I think he wants to find a solution that works, that still addresses some of the climate change actions that has taken place, but also the realities for the sector. So I think what I would actually look at is how he's going to move forward on potentially a Keystone Pipeline, because that also may address another issue, which is the Canada-US issue.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Carl, because, of course, if he does repeal the tanker ban and emissions cap, those are both demanded by the energy companies. And then you have nearly all of those environmental planks that are gone. Do you think he can afford to do this since the NDP is essentially in such disarray right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, the NDP, is forming government in BC, and you're going to have to go through that too. And, if it comes to national unity, can you pick winners and losers in the federation as prime minister? I think it would be a bad strategy. That's why Keystone came into play, because you can kind of solve two problems at the same time. But more than the federal NDP, maybe benefiting from that environmentalist flank, I think it's inside. I think it's internal. The Liberal caucus, there's many MPs and including some ministers who are very concerned about the direction this government is taking, and they've made it known. And I think the first task of the Prime Minister is to keep his government united, because it's a thin minority that he has right now, and he can't afford to lose them because of these kinds of decisions.
Yeah, and Gary, on that point, I mean, there are some key people in there. I think everybody is maybe wondering what Stephen Guilbeault has to say about any of this, because, there's now two pipelines that are essentially on the board, one that is possibly going to BC's west coast and another one that is going south. So how do you think that Mark Carney can sort of try and keep everybody here happy, or does he sort of risk that kind of caucus division, as Carl was talking about?
Well, frankly speaking, it sounds like Stephen Guilbeault may not be around much longer. Rumors in Ottawa have him heading out the door maybe for a diplomatic appointment in short order. His parliamentary pension vests on October the 19th, just around the corner. So that's certainly something to watch if he departs, because he has been the standard bearer for that Green caucus within both the Quebec Liberals and across the country. Yes, of course, Mr. Carney has some internal management issues to deal with, especially since so many of the current cabinet are people he inherited from the Trudeau government. But he says that he's a different prime minister. Well, the proof will be in the pudding to see if he actually advances this. And one of the challenges with going south with the Keystone Pipeline is, remember, our oil trades at a discount compared to oil going to the west coast. And in terms of a proponent for the Keystone Pipeline, there's a lot of energy companies who are once bitten, twice shy to say, we dumped billions of dollars into that project. Consider us a little bit shy about taking on another opportunity when the West Coast might be a quicker option, notwithstanding the opposition of BC, which constitutionally doesn't have a leg to stand on, as everybody knows, and Tim Hodgson and Mark Carney know that responsibility is the federal government's alone, and they're trying to put it on BC and Alberta. No, sorry, that's in your camp, Mr. Hodgson and Mr. Carney.
Yeah, and Rachel, it's interesting because while selling it south may also not be diversifying away from the United States, which is something that this government says that it wants to do, at the same time, it seems like it's the easier path, because the guy now in the Oval Office is not going to block it. He might want it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is, to your point, something that could kind of help them out in the trade conversation, because if the Prime Minister is looking at this as, we are going to be boosting Canada's critical minerals, Canada's natural resources sector, and we could be selling that to the Americans, something that they want, can we do a trade there? So if that does happen and we are to get a deal on steel and aluminum, how does the Prime Minister play that for Canadians in investing down south? We heard Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre go really hard in the House this week on the Prime Minister's comment in the Oval Office, suggesting that $1 trillion of Canadian investment is going to be going to the U.S. at a time of building Canada up. So there's going to have to be pretty clear messaging that there are Canadian jobs in building that pipeline. It would be Canadian steel, aluminum, trying to find ways to make the case to be, yes, investing down south, but making it still work for us.
And Mohammed, one of the things that sort of really strikes me in this is that, that the Liberals are slowly eroding or taking away different environmental protections that have been put in by the previous government there. So how does he square that when you consider that the book that he wrote entitled Values was all about growing the economy and the environment at the same time? And right now, it may not seem like to a lot of Canadians that he's favoring, or that he's doing it equally. It may seem like he's favoring the economy over the environment.
I mean, look, this is a different government. The Prime Minister had a very clear, the economy is really important. I think he's trying to find the right balance.
But it's his book. That's why I say that, right? His book was all about doing both.
Yeah, and I think he's only been a Prime Minister for a few months. And I think there is still, to assess his whole term. I think we still have some time for that. But his first major projects, he's approving mining projects that will help with electrification. There are other, he's looking at CCUS to help support that. I mean, there are other initiatives he is trying to address and move forward that would also have an environmental angle. So it's not just, I think, the be-all or end-all with just this one project. I think we have to look at the overall picture, which is what he's trying to do.
Yeah, and Carl, it seems like there's this, I don't say it's an artificial deadline, but certainly Danielle Smith wants to see it on the list by the next tranche, which is supposed to be coming, at the time for the Grey Cup, which is November for people who are not CFL fans. But like, how much pressure is on Prime Minister Carney to make sure it's on there, even though Danielle Smith's own assessment that her own timeline for giving the assessment on whether or not this is possible is May?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it happening, to be honest, by the Grey Cup. Frankly, I think that's why the move, the Keystone move was there, if only to buy time for the Prime Minister to say to Alberta, I'm working on things. And that's why, you heard Danielle Smith and others in Alberta were really complimentary of these efforts. But at the same time, Keystone has been on the table before, and it's been killed not once but twice by Democratic administration. So who knows if by the time it's ready to go, the Democrats won't be back in the White House and cancel it one more time. That might be the play here, just buy time.
Gary, last to you, especially on the timing of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Danielle Smith has been on the front foot on a lot of advancing Alberta's interests. She just did a tour through Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. She got a standing ovation in Montreal at the Chamber of Commerce lunch. Big reception in Ottawa, big reception in Toronto about advancing this timeline. And she knows that by putting it on the Prime Minister's agenda by the Grey Cup, where she's hoping to have it there, she is setting a deadline that definitely puts the decision right into his camp. And I think that's exactly where she wants to. She's been very aggressive compared to, say, David Eby, who's always been playing defense on this, it seems like. And I think she knows exactly what she's doing here to try to advance this and other projects.